when MTV started broadcasting into Ireland, it was a formative musical education medium for me, and it was concomitant to the time I started kind of playing music a bit more seriously. And a lot of the videos, but particularly the music from the videos, was inspirational. And one of the bands that made a big impression back then was a band called Blancmange. They were fantastic. Neil on vocals, and kind of had a bit of an image and stage presence. And I really liked his style of vocals. Fantastic and influential. And also kind of Stephen on synth and kind of drum machines and kind of textures and stuff. Absolutely fantastic. Unbeknownst to me, and it's kind of only really come to my attention recently, that we shared three formative influences. They were influenced by early Human League and early Cabaret Voltaire. And in my band, Voltaire, we started as a kind of a proto kind of Human League band. And then we kind of metastasized into being a Cabaret Voltaire band, And they were also influenced by the BBC Radiophonic Workshop. And my album, The Synth Show, has the BBC Radiophonic Workshop as a primary influence. They were really, really influential and very successful. They had 3 top 10 hits. The iconic Living on the Ceiling, Blind Vision, and Don't Tell Me. These were all top 10 hits. And they had 2 very, very successful albums. One called Happy Families and Tu Manche. And they were both very, very successful. And the kind of the kind of duo formation, the kind of Stephen playing synths and working the drum machines and all that kind of stuff, and then Andy or Neil as the front man. Neil had a really, really cool image, and he was absolutely fantastic. Not only a fantastic vocalist, but really catchy vocals, and everywhere they went, they brought the house down. They were amazing. And years later, when I returned to synth pop music, they were a reference point for me, because one of the first influences, because again, it's kind of the synth pop paradigm, and recursive to that, there's kind of genres, and one of the synth pop genres I called the kind of Blancmange genre. And that was one of the first ones, kind of a key touchstone one for me. And they were even though it was years before, and they had nothing to do with Voltaire, they were an influence. They were influencing what I was doing when I kind of re-entered the fray of synth pop music. Their kind of rhythmic textures and stuff like that. It was absolutely highly influential, and it was a kind of a gateway for me back in, and also to kind of then diverge into other arenas within the kind of synth pop paradigm. So their influence has stood the test of time, and I mean there still is an interest in their music, and they were incredibly successful, and the airplay they were getting was prodigious airplay on MTV. They were on it practically every day, several times a day, and that really kind of promulgated their name, and certainly those albums that I mentioned and those songs that I mentioned, aforementioned, those were the ones that made an impact on, my kind of formative musical mores. And again, it was, languishing in abeyance until I actually decided to kind of, reenact the kind of whole kind of synth pop paradigm. And, and they were like a formative influence back then. That came out when I started, re-entering this kind of, genre. So, Blancmange, fantastic band. Thank you very much for listening.